Welcome back to another edition of Aspire TV. Please be sure to look for us on Facebook, Aspire TV, plus Aspire Magazine. Today, I have a special guest, and I've enjoyed his music over the years, and we're kind of near the same age, right? I want to introduce, he's an artist that captures an audience with his unique and delivering insightful lyrics and sorrowing vocals. Let me introduce to you Charlie Farren. Welcome, Charlie.
Hey, this is fun. This is terrific. I'm really happy to be here.
Well, we're glad you're here. You've got a lot of fans that are going to be watching this and a lot of viewers, and I'm excited for you to be here.
Excellent.
So we're going to be talking about some exciting news that you're going to be announcing later on in the interview. But let's get started. Charlie, where did you grow up? Where are you from? Where were you all born and all?
Well, I grew up in Malden, Massachusetts, which is, for folks who aren't New Englanders, if it were anywhere else in the country, it would be part of Boston. It's a suburb of Boston, but it's really, really close. And grew up in Malden, Massachusetts with my three sisters and mom and dad.
Where were you, is your family, was your parents into the music industry or?
No, well, not music industry. But we were a musical family, and we always sang as a family. We would go on car trips and sing. We would sing after dinner. My aunts and uncles sang. It was a family would sing. Wonderful meal, Alice. Wonderful meal, Alice. Let's have a song. And
oh my
everybody
God,
would
that's
sing.
amazing.
So when I first went to school, the teacher would say, "Okay, class, stand up and let's sing." And the class would all stand up, and all these kids would have these little voices, and I took a breath and I'd go, "Ha!" I'd sing. We sang out, and people would all turn around, "Oh, gee," and look at me like, "What? What are you doing?" I thought we were going to sing. So we always sang, and I wanted to play piano when I was little, and my parents resolved that by getting a guitar. And I started, and it was my dad's guitar, but they really got it for me, and my sister, and my sisters, and my sister was really the first one to learn to play, and she plays guitar and banjo. My oldest sister, and
banjo.
She plays guitar and 5-string banjo,
Wow.
and she had a band, and they rehearsed at my house, and it was they were called the Gemini Players, and they were two Jewish girls and two Irish girls, and they did Irish and Jewish folk songs, Hebrew folk songs, and they played around Malden, focusing on a lot of the elderly homes and libraries and things like that. And it was 12-string, 6-string, 5-string banjo, and the girl played tambourine, and they had beautiful harmonies. And I couldn't believe that you could actually have your own band.
Right.
So I would watch them play, and I just thought it was fantastic, and wanted to be in a band so bad. This was probably in 6th or 7th grade. So it was really my oldest sister, and since then I've gotten the 5-string banjo, and I play banjo now too. So
That's amazing. Is it hard to learn?
Well, I play guitar with. I grew up learning how to play guitar with a pick, but more recently, I've not even recently, but I started writing and playing with my fingers. So I play with my fingers. I don't use a pick, and so switching to banjo, having a right hand that's pretty versatile. It was easier for me to pick up the banjo, and I can trick you into thinking I'm pretty good on the banjo. I know a lot of tricks.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny. So when you were growing up, you were singing with your family. Did you have an idol that said, "I want to be like him," or "I want to be like her"?
Well, a couple of yes, a couple of times in my life, I thought, like, bingo, this is what I want to do. And one of the times that really killed me I mean, so yes, as a young kid, I would listen to the music my parents listened to, and I always loved, you know, Frank Sinatra, and Andy Williams was one. I always loved Dean Martin, and um, Nat King Cole. I loved, you know,
Oh,
that stuff.
yeah.
Um, but as I grew up and started to really want to be musical, I remember going to a Rod Stewart concert with my friends, and I was in high school.
Whoa.
And it was actually a Small Faces show, and Rod was the singer. And I remember watching them from the balcony, and Rod was running all over the stage, and there were six Super Trooper follow spots just following him around on the stage.
Yeah.
And I said to my friends, I said, this is what I want to do. I want to be that guy with a full house with six follow spots following me around. And every single one of my friends said, "Oh, get out. You could never do that's not people like us don't get to do this." You know, and I remember just looking and thinking, yeah, one day you'll see.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do this. And so I just remember that was just like a moment. I was a Rod Stewart fan, but it was less being a Rod Stewart fan and more that moment when I said, "Look at this guy. He has figured it out." And I said, "I got to figure it out." So
Now, did you play with Rod Stewart?
I never met Rod Stewart, but I have been fortunate enough in my long-legged career to play with many, many, many of the very best, biggest stars in the world. So that's very cool.
So, all right. So now you get your mindset that I am going to be this person, right?
Yeah.
So, did you start out with a small band when you were younger, and then build to like? I mean, you've worked with some of the best in the world, right?
Yeah,
So,
I have. I started. I got a guitar and learned two or three chords. Kind of learned the chords, and understood that with three chords you could do X amount of songs, and with four chords, all of a sudden exponentially you could do so many more, and five chords, and so on. So I was in bands, little bands, and we would not have gigs. We would just rehearse, you know.
you
And
never played at the town line.
but I'm going back to pre high school. You know, this is like
Yeah.
little kid stuff. And we'd play at, you know, people would have parties, and we'd play at the parties or at school events and stuff. And as I got older, I was in college, and I had some successes in high school in a band with music I wrote, and I wanted to pursue that, but I just felt that the path to go to college was kind of like set. You know, I was like,
Yeah.
okay, you go to high school, now you go to college. And so I did that for a year. After the first year in college, I was in a band, and we got a job down the Cape all summer. And so it was my
Really?
first experience of living away, and it was from home, and it was my first experience being on the road. It wasn't really the road, but it felt that way to me. And we played all summer in a club. And when I came back to go back to school, I thought, oh no, you know, I don't want to go back to school.
Right.
And I was going to a class. I was an English literature major, and
Oh.
I was going to coming from an English literature class where we were reading Beowulf, and which I felt it was impenetrable. You know, and I mean, it's written in Old English, so it's not even really English.
It's
So
tough.
at any rate, it's a great literary work, but it wasn't capturing my imagination at all. And I was walking on my way to a weather and climate class where they teach you about what the names of clouds are. And so I thought to myself, and as I passed the Student Union building, there was a rock band setting up, getting ready to play, and the guitar player played a couple of chords, and I stopped and thought, how is he getting that sound?
Right.
This is what I should be learning how to do, not names of clouds. So
Really?
I said, I don't sound like that. So I went home and said, I'm dropping out of college, and my parents said, well, what are you going to do? So I'm going to be a rock star.
They're like, oh no.
And they looked at each other and thought, you know, okay. And I was able to I just jumped in. You know, I knew I was in a band with my high school friends, but I knew that I had to get out of Malden. And
Yeah.
I had so I remember I dropped out of school, and the very next week I had heard that there was a concert on Harvard Square on the Common.
Mhm.
And so I put on my best rock and roll clothes, and I got on a bus and got on a train and got on a trolley and went to Harvard Square, and there was a band playing on the lawn, just set up on the grass. And there were 400 or 500 people sitting in a circle around the band. This is very hippie. It was not a concert. It was very hippie. And
Yeah.
a band was playing, and I just walked, and they were about 4 or 5 years older than me. And I walked up, and the drummer was the singer, 2 guitars, bass, drums. And I said, you know, I'm a singer. Do you mind if I sit in with you guys? And they
Wow.
said, no, come and sit in. I was like, what? And so I didn't even know the songs. I made up the words, and I kind of knew the songs. I had heard them and kind of was, I don't bother even about me, making up the words. And they called me a couple of days later and said, hey, do you want to be the singer in our band? And I thought, what? I mean, these guys, well, one of the guys was married. They were older. They had cars, you know, they had apartments, and I was still living at home. And I said, yeah. And they said, we don't want you to play guitar, though. We just want you to be a singer. We have 2 guitar players. So I joined that band, and we ended up being called Live Lobster.
Live
And
Lobster?
Live Lobster. And we were doing
Lobster.
we were doing cover songs, but we ended up hooking up with some agencies and working a lot, like all over the Northeast,
Wow.
from like Philadelphia to like Buffalo to Bangor, Maine to New York City, the Northeast. And we
Yeah.
would do 4 and 5 and 6 nights a week, and like in clubs. And I really learned. I wasn't playing guitar, but I learned how to be that guy. And
That's
we
cool.
did that. Yeah, and we did that for 3 or 4
Did the
years.
spotlight follow you all over the stage while you sang?
No, there was, believe me, there were no spotlights in these clubs. This was very much, we put our gear, we had like 5 guys in 5 cars with our gear in each car. We had a caravan, and we had to bring our own lights and our own PA and set it all up ourselves. And no, there was
No handyman helping out.
no, there was no glamour in these
Stage
shows,
hand,
but
right? Yeah.
no. But when you're 18 or 19 and you're gigging and traveling, it seems glamorous.
Yeah.
In retrospect, it wasn't glamorous, but at the time we thought, yeah, we're making it, you know, we're doing it.
Yeah.
And but I was a guitar player, and I started to write songs, and I brought the songs into the band. And of course I wasn't playing guitar, so the guys who are all older than me and more accomplished than me as players, they kind of interpreted my songs, and we performed them, and it was kind of encouraging. But I kept thinking, if I was playing guitar, I would be playing it differently. And so I just decided after about 3 years I would leave and try to start my own all original band with songs that I write. And it was hard. It was hard to step away from a band that was gigging 45 weeks a year.
Yeah.
But I went to work in a music store and started to work, you know, on my material, and eventually put together Balloon, which was my first all original band.
Balloon?
Balloon, yes.
And
And
what would you come up with that name, Balloon?
uh, um, well, when we first started the band, I had a friend that used to use that word as an example of making something bigger than life, right? And uh, I thought that that was a cool name for a band, so we kind of went with that. And
Okay.
it was guitar, 2 guitars, bass, drums, and we were doing all original music. And it was very, very, very difficult to get work at the beginning. But we just, I would go, if we ever got a job opening for somebody, I would show up at noon because I wanted to watch them load the gear in. I
Right.
wanted to see how they wrapped their cables. I wanted to where they stored their cases. You know, I wanted to know everything. And over the years, I noticed there were other bands that would do the same thing. They wouldn't show up for sound check. They'd show up for load in, you
Yeah.
know. I want to learn how these guys carry themselves, how they talk to their crew, how they talk with the club. I wanted to witness it, and gradually I got into recording and was able to record some songs that got picked up by the radio. Charles Guitarist started playing.
Oh, Charles, yeah.
One of my songs, and he was the main guy, and WBCN was the big station. So anything they played, everybody picked up.
Right.
And so we ended up getting added. So radio stations very reluctantly and rarely play non-signed music. And when they do, it's usually like after midnight or on Sunday mornings.
Right.
We were able to get two separate singles at two different times added across, New England, right? It wasn't just one station. It was led by BCN, but everybody picked up on it. And we were able to play all over New England, or all original material, selling out rooms based on the strength of these two singles that were released over the course of a couple of years.
Did you say this name of the songs? Oh, you didn't.
One of the songs, the first song was called East Coast, West Coast. And the second song was called Listen to the Rock. And both of those songs were included on the Joe Perry Project record on CBS when I signed with him.
Okay.
And so they were kind of hits for Balloon, and then they were hits again for the Joe Perry Project.
Okay. So the Balloon, though, is where you had the original hits, though. So,
but yes, and we were really surging, and we started to get our own gigs and sell out rooms and actually make some money. And
that's huge.
Very, very, very exciting time, because it's really, really hard to pull that off, to become a headliner doing all originals across a region. Sometimes you can do it in a town, in a city, or at a nightclub, but we were able to do it regionally. And at one point, WAAF, we did a concert for them live in Worcester on the street, and TV 38 broadcasted on TV. And this was before stereo radio.
Right.
And WAAF broadcast it in stereo over the radio station. So you turn off the TV sound, turn on the radio, and watch TV. And they called it Rally in the Alley, and it was simulcast all over New England. So it was picked up by a bunch of stations, and so those were just there was a couple of thousand people there, and it was very exciting, a very exciting time for me and my band.
It sounds it. So then you signed with the Joe Perry band. You were with Joe Perry. How long were you with the Joe Perry Project?
I signed up with Joe in '80, so probably about less than 2 years, probably little less than 2 years. I was with Joe Perry, and
are the stories true? All those drugs and alcohol and wild parties?
Say that again.
Is those wild parties true about the Joe Perry? The drugs and alcohol and wild parties, they say, with the rock and roll of Joe Perry?
Well, I'm sure that's happened, but in my experience, it really, even with any band, it really wasn't about partying. I think people see bands and they're partying. When they go to see a band, they're partying, right?
It's the truth.
They're putting together a rock show on a high level. There's not a lot of partying going on. I don't want to.
Well, you're working. It's always working.
You're working. It's serious. Yeah. And when you tour, and the first tour we did was with Ozzy, and of course,
oh
Ozzy,
my God,
right? And he
did that whole thing with the bad hat, right? The bad.
Well, but so they have their image, but it was really a professional outfit. They were all pro.
Well, they've made
the players were probably
from it. So
right, and they're touring across the country with a caravan of gear, and it's there's no fooling around. This is a big bucks, professional level touring show.
And what was that like? Did you have your own plane, but you had first class at least? You're flying from here to there. Were you on a different state, a different week? What was it like?
Well, so yeah, it was a different city every night, and you do lose track of where you are. And that still happens. People usually put their set list on on one side of the mic stand taped to the floor, and on the other side of the mic stand they put what town they're in and
Wow.
how
Okay.
it's pronounced. And because you forget, it's if you're doing something every night, all of the hotels, all of the airport terminals, all of the venues, all of the dressing rooms are very similar with one another. So
Okay.
after you do 30, 40, 50, 100 of these, it really blends together.
Mhm.
And it has nothing to do with partying. It just has to do with the crazy atmosphere traveling with 20, 30 people,
Mhm.
right? From city to city. It's a pretty big deal. It's a pretty big circus to bring on the road.
Can you
Um,
tell us about a scary experience that you might have had with a fan that you were really like, oh my God, you wouldn't believe this craziness?
well, I mean, I did have when after I was with Joe, I eventually put together Farrenheit, and we were signed to Warner Brothers really quickly right away.
It's awesome.
And one of the I'm trying to think of where we were heading. We were flying. I won't say the airline. Um, we were on tour, and it was the first leg of the Boston tour, and I think we were heading to or from Denver,
Okay.
and uh, they were just serving the food, and all of a sudden the plane hit. I don't know, a pocket. I don't know what a pocket is, but
Oh,
the
yes. Yes. One of
plane
those air pockets. That's
and the
scary.
plane and the plane dropped, and I don't know how many feet it dropped, but it just they didn't expect it because they were serving at the time, but it dropped enough so that everyone in the plane came right out of their seat
Oh my
and
God.
floated in the air for count to 5. But think about that. One,
That's scary.
two, what? Oh no, I'm floating in the air. And all of the food, all of the beverages crashed into the ceiling of the plane. That's how dramatic it felt. Everybody came up off your feet and floated in the air, and then boom, fell back down.
Wow.
And there was food, there was coffee, there was meals, there was panic, there was screaming, and nothing. I mean, that was what happened. The plane didn't crash, but that was the scariest moment.
That
It
is.
was shortly after we were touring with Ozzy that they had their accident, and their guitar player got killed.
Oh.
And I think it had something to do. Somebody can kind of call in and correct me if I'm wrong. I think it had something to do with half the plane, half the guys were in a plane, and half the guys were in a bus, and the plane, fooling around, buzzed the bus, and that caused the accident. Now, I might be getting my rock bands wrong. Maybe that happened to. I think it happened to Ozzy. Maybe that was Lynyrd Skynyrd. I also toured with Lynyrd Skynyrd, so I might be getting my stories mixed up. But I was involved with the drop and the plane, and yikes, that will wake you up.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think I would. Your whole life flashes in front of you, right?
It was kind of freaky. I mean, it happened so quickly um, that you didn't really capture the impact of it until after it was over. You
Ah.
know, like what happened? When I was with Joe Perry, so no. So first of all, we weren't at a level where we were traveling first class. We were still traveling coach, and which was strange because the band, Aerosmith was huge, and Joe Perry is a huge star, and he was at the time. But the Joe Perry project wasn't Aerosmith, right? We weren't an opening act, but we were kind of like a middle special guest act, right? And I mean, Joe was a big star, but the band wasn't we weren't making the big bucks. We were doing well, but not the giant bucks, right? So,
Yeah.
so we were still traveling like regular travelers, and that's grueling. And it's really grueling when you're doing it 4, 5, 6 nights a week, days a week, because it takes you all day to travel, and then you got to
It
do
is
a
a
show.
long day.
So it's hard work, and you can't do it if you're not pretty sharp you know.
Well, you
Uh,
have to be. Then you're going to set up, and then you're performing all night, and then you're going to get up and do it all over again tomorrow, right?
yeah, yeah. And
And
so
it must put a
it's
toll on your family.
um, well, so when I was touring with Joe, we didn't have kids yet. I was married, but we didn't have kids, and she has her own career, you know. So she didn't come out on the road with us. She was developing her own career, and uh, so it was exciting. It was fantastic, but it wasn't a nonstop party. I think that's the narrative that they tell you on TV,
Well,
and
yeah,
that's not to say that there aren't moments, but of course there are. But for the most part, you're thinking about tomorrow night. You're thinking about you got to get back to your hotel and hurry up and sleep because you got to get up and pack because you got to get a flight, and then you got to do sound check, and you do that over and over again, and you can't do that if you're not, you know, in pretty good health shape, you know.
no, of course not. How
No.
many? Did you say how many children you have?
We have three grown children, and they're grown. And today we have four grandchildren, and three of them are here with us today. So
Oh,
we have a fun time.
that sounds like the grandchildren are nice. They come to visit, but you can send them home and fill them up with candy, huh?
Well, they're doing really well, and they're right now they're 4, 2, and 1.
Okay.
4, 2.5, and 1. And I have a 5-year-old that lives in California. 5-year-old granddaughter.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, you live in Massachusetts?
Yes, we live in Massachusetts, and in Chelmsford.
Oh, you're right
And
down the road from me. I'm in Hudson.
yeah, yeah, and we love it here. We've been here 25 something years. And I'm you know excited, you know. So we had talked a little bit about Farrenheit.
Yeah,
You
let's
know,
talk about
we
Fahrenheit.
we had so Joe, we toured with Rush and with Joe Perry, with ZZ Top, who I
Easy.
played with them
Yeah.
last summer.
Shop
I
dress
think
men.
yeah, great band, and I was able to reconnect with them last summer to do some shows
No
with
kidding.
them. Yeah,
Oh, I
and
would love to hear them again in person. Yeah.
yeah, they're great. And I said to Billy, I toured with you when I was with Joe, and he said, "I remember you. I don't remember any of the shows though." You know, that was 30 years ago, but that, you know, they've done a lot of shows since then.
What?
But so we toured with Alice Cooper and
Uh,
Def Leppard and
oh, Def Leppard.
Foghat, uh,
Foghat.
Scorpions, Judas Priest. I
Scorpions.
can't even remember. ZZ Top again. Uh, Nazareth.
Nazareth.
I'm gonna leave people Kansas.
Oh my
I'm
God,
gonna leave
Kansas.
I'm gonna leave people out because it's impossible to remember everybody. But Fahrenheit toured a lot, and obviously we did the whole Boston tour.
Right.
And we did some shows with Whitesnake and Aerosmith, and you know, got to do fun stuff. You know,
Yeah.
became friendly with Sam Kinison.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
you know, you do a lot of these meet and greets and promotional softball games with radio stations, and
Yeah.
you know, so they fill it's the rock stars versus the DJs,
How funny is that?
and so you get on a softball team, and there's Ronnie James Dio, and there's I can't even think, but you know, this guy and that guy from this band and that band, and the radio station always cheats and brings in professional ball players to so they win, but that's really fun. And so we did Fahrenheit. You know, when Joe, you know, they wanted to get Aerosmith back together, and when that became clear, David Hall, who was playing bass with Fahrenheit, I mean with the Joe Perry project, started Fahrenheit, and we toured a lot, but most notably we did the whole '87 tour with Boston, and every single show was sold out.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, and a highlight of that show was at the Cotton Bowl at the Texas Jam. It was 85,000 people, and Fahrenheit kicked off the show. It was Whitesnake, Aerosmith, Tesla, Poison,
Poison.
and Boston, and Fahrenheit. and that was crazy. You know, that was a
That's
fantastic.
insane. What a lineup.
Equally insane was I did a couple of times. I did anthems for the Red Sox.
Oh, really?
And I've done anthems a couple of times at Foxborough for the Patriots and the Revolution. And so that's
a secret. I owned a pro men's football team for 3 years, which was indoor, and I actually won the whole East Coast. I was the owner, and I last year was my last year.
What was the name of the team?
The New England Bobcats.
The Bobcats?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a cool name.
The New England Bobcats. I actually rented out the Chelmsford Forum in Chelmsford, which holds 3,500 people. That was the arena I played in 2 years ago. So.
Oh, yeah. Wow, I didn't.
Anyways, that's just a little tibbo because you said football. I should have had you come out there, so I didn't know you were in Chelmsford. I would have had you out there. We would have sold out.
So I did Farrenheit, and we did 90 shows with something. I don't even remember. With Boston, and we did our own. We toured with Joan Jett, and
Joan Jett.
Just so many different acts. I can't even think. But the Farrenheit thing was the Boston tour was the big tour of the summer that year, and we were fortunate to get on that bill and get in front of 1 million people that summer, and what a blast,
Yeah.
That lasted really that right around 1989, and I remember because my oldest baby was born in 1989. And 1989 signaled the end of the Boston tour, and it was the end of 80s rock, and a new sound was emerging. This Chili Peppers, Rage Against the Machine, Beastie Boys kind of thing.
All right.
I turned to David one time while we were traveling from gig to gig, listening to cassettes or CDs that we picked up from Warner Brothers.
Cassettes and CDs.
Yeah, we would get.
We gotta laugh because they don't exist really anymore, right?
But we'd go to the Warner Brothers offices, and they just let us take whatever we wanted to listen to. The Warner, from their catalog, and so we would be listening to all this new music. And I remember turning to David and Muzz and just saying, "Guys, if I were 19, I'd be listening to this. I don't think I'd be listening to us,
right.
Because this isn't fresh sound. This is new and angry sounding, and Teen Spirit was out, Nirvana was out, and that was a new sound, and it was more vivid of a sound than what we were doing, or what Bon Jovi was doing, or what Def Leppard was doing. So the young kids came out with a new sound, and I remember just Warner Brothers was having a turnover with their executive staff, and it happens really every 10 years in the music business. There's a complete house cleaning, and new things come in, right?
Yeah.
So at the same time, we were also having our first baby, and I realized that touring with a band all over the country was not really going to work when we were also having a family. And it was time to change. The sound was changing, everything was changing at that time. And I went to work at Digital Equipment Corporation because I needed to have a dad job. I didn't need to be traveling the world at that point. And started to perform solo maybe 3 or 4 times a year. But my focus was Digital Equipment, and Compaq bought Digital, and then HP bought Compaq.
Right.
So HP that way. And performed 2 or 3 times a year and kept putting out records. But my focus was on being successful in my corporate career and successfully raising a family. So I kept making music and releasing music, but I was really focused on a job that morphed over the years into a global. I headed up a global business development team, focusing on building a business around Linux, which might be too technical now, but Linux is a enterprise level operating system, or at least it was emerging into that at the time.
Right.
And so the task for our team was to go out and foster relationships in the Linux market and develop a business for HP on the Linux platform. And we were able to, over the course of my 20 years there, we were able to do that. And that was a real learning curve and a nice little feather in my cap. And a great, it turned out to be a great family supporting career for me.
Which is important. Now, I was told to ask you, from Sarah and Brian Landry, say hi to them. They're your biggest fans, and they've seen you quite a few times in concert. There's a story behind the Too Young, Too Old story. Was there a story behind that song?
Well, I tell this story at my show, and one of the songs that I do when I'm touring with. So this past year, I toured a lot with Three Dog Night.
Oh, I heard that. John Cameron told my friend. Our friend told me that. John. He said you've been touring with Three Dog, and I like them.
And REO Speedwagon.
Oh, REO Speedwagon, yeah.
Yeah, I probably did 30 or 40 shows with each of those guys.
Wow.
And Cheap Trick and Loverboy and ZZ Top.
Yeah.
John Fogerty and as a solo.
Wow.
But I started performing solo when I was working at HP, Compact Digital HP.
Yeah.
And I realized I really liked that. As a songwriter, it serves the songs well, and it showcases my voice and guitar skills and my lyrics. And I thought this is the way to go. When I left Joe, I signed a deal with before I was on Warner Brothers. I signed a deal with Atlantic. Ahmet Erdogan signed me. He was the founder of Atlantic, and he heard my band, but he liked my demos, which were nylon string guitar and vocal. And he said, I love the band, but I don't want to sign it. I already have bands like this, but I don't have anybody like you on my label, and I want to make this record on my label. And he even came to my house in Boston. I was living in Back Bay at the time, and I had a studio there, and Ahmed would come and hang out in my studio with me and would listen to records and talk about music. And I never ended up getting my record out on Warner's on Atlantic, because Warner signed my band, but I always wanted to make that solo record, and now I'm doing that, right? And Ahmed has passed, but that's the record I would have made on Atlantic if I hadn't signed with Warner Brothers at that moment in time.
Yeah.
But I guess it was about 10 years ago I retired from HP and started working, as a solo performer. And
do you perform locally now, solo?
I do. I had a project with John Butcher for a while we call it Farren Butcher Incorporated, FBI.
Okay.
And we did that as a duo for a couple of years.
Where did you perform?
Mostly in like listening rooms, 200 and 300 seat concert venues, like Tupelo Music Hall or
oh yeah, Londonderry.
And the Spire down in Plymouth.
Okay.
Like that. And after a few years, I started to perform more solo, and now I'm exclusively solo and performing across the country with the bands I've been touring with. Big the ZZ and Cheap Trick and auditoriums and theaters with REO Speedwagon and Three Dog Night, and it's
Jeremiah was a bullfrog, right?
Fantastic. Every song is a hit with all of these bands. Cheap Trick was great. REO Speedwagon, every night they just kill it. And Three Dog, it's just all hits.
Keep on loving you. That's right. Yeah.
It's been a fantastic experience for me, and the idea of having a solo. And it's not a folk act; it's a rock show that I do.
So that with those individuals, you're going to be going on tour next year, right?
Well, so I'm certain that we will. I will. And right now, I had the whole spring and summer booked, and all of those dates got postponed and then postponed
I know
again.
that feeling.
Yeah, I expect that we'll I'll be able to hook up with some tours, and I will be playing locally, but my focus is really getting on some of these tours and getting across North America. And
If you do, I'd like to, with my magazine, I'd like to go on, fly out to a few of them and cover them for the magazine.
sure, that definitely can happen, and
Yeah.
it's a lot of fun. And we have dates that I'm holding for lots of these different performances. So hopefully some of these will happen.
Well, I hope so. I'm in 10 states next year for my own, I run Women Empowering Women conferences. So hopefully you'll be in the same state as me, which would be great, right? But if not, I'll fly out, But I
Okay,
think it'd be great to catch you, with that. Are you ready to make the announcement yet? You got a new song, a new record coming out, right?
record coming out. And it's called Charlie Farren, America's Special Guest, which is how I build myself when I'm touring. And it's called Guitar and Voice. And
Okay. When can we hear it?
the thing about this is that it features a single guitar track and a single vocal track. And that's all. There's no harmonies or leads or drums or bass or keys or anything. It's a guitar and a voice, and it rocks out.
Mhm.
And I just got the master back, and it's awesome. So
I can't wait to hear it.
I'm waiting to see how the calendar kind of
Okay.
shapes up, and I'll schedule the release of the record to kind of coincide with when live dates start happening again.
Well, definitely. And when you get live dates, though, I'll put it in the issue. I mean, they're just in department stores, and so the magazine will be. And so when you get that, let's put it in the magazine too.
Now,
And we'll do another interview for Aspire.
what was the name of the organization you said, the Empowering Women, or what was the name of that?
Woman Empowering Woman Conferences. So I have a private group that have over 1,000 women in there, and then I do publicly conferences. So that's what I'll be doing throughout the country next year.
I have worked with several women who are very influential media type people who have similar passions and work in similar organizations, and I'd be happy to connect you up with them.
I'd really appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that would be cool because
I'm always looking at speakers. I need speakers, right? So we're in 10 states. Yeah, definitely.
That's a good thing. I grew up with 3 sisters, and I have now I have 2 granddaughters, and I have
That's amazing.
And I have 2 daughters. So I'm definitely all for empowering women. Empowering people, right?
So I actually have we have viewers that are going to be watching you today, obviously. It might not come out, well, today it will, the day they see it. It will be edited first by my editor, right? But what would you like the closing? I know we've been going a while, and we want everyone to watch the whole thing, right? So what would you like them to know about you, and what can they look forward to? And can you tell them how they can find you and follow you on social media and your website?
Okay, so my website is charliefarren.com, and I am active on Facebook, and I'm active on Instagram, and post pretty frequently in those. And my website is charliefarren.com, as I said. Okay. And I'm psyched about what I'm doing now. The guitar and voice thing, it's interesting because it's a nylon string guitar, which very few people are playing rock shows with nylons. I mean, Willie Nelson plays a nylon. Mm-hmm. I can't think of anyone else at the moment.
Is he still playing up, though? I thought he retired.
I don't know. But he's got that famous guitar with a hole in it.
Yes, exactly.
That's
Before I forget, I need you to do a shout out to the class of '85, Billerica Memorial High School, class of '85. Because Brian McCarthy sings your songs almost one of your songs almost every Saturday night. So I want you to say hi to them.
Okay, well, big shout out to the class of '85, Billerica Memorial High School. Go for it.
All right. Is there anything else we should know about? And can we do a follow-up in the fall with you with Aspire?
Let's do a follow-up. We can spell it FALLOW, follow-up. And what a blast. This is fun. It seems like quickly. And
it did. We're almost 45, 50 minutes, so it might get cut a little bit, but it's a big one.
There's so much more to talk about. So yeah, let's do it again. And good luck with your organizations there. That's really important. That's good.
Oh yes, thank you. Yeah, we can do another follow-up. You want to talk again? I can reach out. Let's do one of in the next 2 months. We'll do another one or whatever. We'll book it out.
Right, and the record will be out by then. It will be soaring to the top.
It absolutely will be. That's what we hear. So why don't we make sure that we definitely do one within 2 months? This has been great. Thank you again, Charlie, for tuning in, viewers, so that tune in. You've got to get his record. And thanks again for tuning in to Aspire TV. Till next time.
Go get him.
Go get him.